Hey there, it's Karen again with Naturally with Karen, and I am getting a little better each time with these live streams, so that's positive. I'm here, I'm doing these live streams, and today I have one that's called What is Causing Many, not all, many of our addictions. Now, most everyone today is aware that we have an opiate dependency issue. We have friends that are taking anti-anxiety medications. And even when I go to the dog park, someone may walk in and tell me, my dog forgot to take its anxiety medicine. I say, what is anxiety medicine? Because we can't handle anxiety and depression, bless up, thank you Anthony, with medicine, which is really not medicine at all. It's really drugs. They are really drugs. So today's live stream is positive if you or someone that you love, someone that you work with, is suffering from addiction. And we have lots of Xanax, we have lots of things coming through the dark web, we have lots of things coming through the pharmacies, through the streets, from all different angles. And they are put there to trap you. So as I speak more and more with you about what traps are, sometimes they're the earbuds you put in your ears, the earphones that you put on, and the music that you're listening to. And you might not even realize it. Sometimes it's the food that you're putting in your mouth, okay? When we're getting angry or stressed out, or we're really stressed and we're feeling bitter about something, it's more than likely that we're going to chew on something that's got a crunch to it. Like me, when I feel kind of angry, I go for the tortilla chips and the salsa and the guacamole. Really great way to release anger through the jaw. That's a really old part of our mammalian being, okay? What's causing all of this addiction? Have you heard about fentanyl? Fentanyl is killing our people. It absolutely, bless up Kim. Fentanyl is killing our people. They are snorting it. They are using this drug in many ways. Heroin, used on aluminum tinfoil. We're going to do something that's a little bit funny a little bit later, but I have a close family member that became addicted to fentanyl and heroin. My uncle, who killed himself, was addicted to many things once he had thyroid cancer, Don Pringle. And I came to a place where I actually now cannot even look at a roll of aluminum tinfoil the same way, because it's almost like a trauma. Like, I see the aluminum tinfoil, and the last time I found a roll, I just did this really exaggerated just and I just destroyed the tinfoil and I put it in the recycle can, because it just represented everything that I don't like. I don't cook my food in tinfoil for a long time. No garlic bread, no potatoes. I don't want to cook any food in aluminum. I mean, we already have enough in our veins from vaccinations and grandma who didn't know and was cooking in aluminum pans, and aluminum that comes through some of our food source that the animals were eating. And so we have more than enough aluminum. We don't need to bring home aluminum, Reynolds wrap, or any of the others and cook our food in it. We need to stop that. And sometimes we just get totally dependent on, that's the way grandma and mom, and now mom, you know, and now the children are wrapping up their potato or something, but it's really toxic. Our people today have so much anxiety and depression. They're picking at their face, they're picking at their skin, they're micromanaging with tweezers. And I know if you're watching this, you know exactly what I'm saying, because I worked thousands of hours, I still do, with real people, nurses, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists. I have a client who's a psychiatrist. And they all said they could provide some sort of therapy that was listening and talk therapy and sitting on the couch. They knew a few pointers like cut back on the sugar, but they didn't know some of the things that I helped to guide them with their children. Their children were going to places like Miller Dewan, which is a treatment center for psychological, what do you do with your loved one? But these were all warning signs that life was too far off balance, okay? The anxiety and the depression and the thyroid issue, the master gland is what it's typically called. I call it, because I don't like the word master, I call it your thermostat. That's what I call it in the book. If you've got cold hands and feet, or you're the opposite, your thyroid's too fast and you're just hot all the time, like when I go into my shop where I rent. The other day it was about 60 degrees. I had a client coming in for a table session, and I went in and actually turned the heater on a little bit, because when you're taking your clothes off, getting into the, the back space of the shop, it was a little chilly. But they were like, oh my God, please, and they're overheated because they were in a slowed thyroid, disrupted adrenals, poor diet, lots of cheese, cans of Coke, Mountain Dew, some of them are smoking cigarettes, that they're so heat toxic, as the traditional Chinese medicine doctors call it, toxic heat in the body. It's also an elevated heat on a temperature level. So, wherever you are in the spectrum of degeneration, okay, or you're detoxifying yourself and you're still working through some of this toxicity, you're either going to be too hot, or you might be too cold, or you might be kind of vacillating because you're cleaning and clearing yourself out. This anxiety and depression that we've been taught to stuff it down, keep going, get your butt up and get to school, get on that bus, get your backpack, get going. Who cares if you're leaving mom at home? Who cares if you're not learning the home and hearth? Who cares if you're not learning how to grow food, take care of yourself, and heal yourself? Who cares if we got to farm grandma off to a nursing home? She's old, we're getting a new one anyway, we got a next generation. This is why it's crucial to understand what is beneath the chemical dependency. So if you read in my description and I say what's causing many of our addictions, and I go, as I have for the last 2 years, and I've spoken with probably about 100 people. I've spoken with Deb Klajowski that used to run the Haven, who was a chemical dependency manager there for about 10 years, and she was my client. She's one of my testimonials. I also saw her son, Caney, quite a bit. And I've spoken with many of the ladies over at the Center for Drug and Alcohol Center in Duluth, Minnesota. I have spoken with numerous psychologists, a couple psychiatrists. I've read numerous books. I've spoken with hospital personnel when I've gone to the hospital because the stomach is so irritated from this. The constipation that's a result of a lot of opiate use, and then the flooding of the diarrhea when the person tries to start detoxing. The vomiting, the stealing when there's no money to buy what they need to buy. Also the behaviors of staying up all night long because their circadian rhythm is so off balance. When I go and I speak with advocates, sponsors, another one is Stefan Witherspoon in Duluth, Minnesota, who is a sponsor. Another is over at Pathfinders inside of the Center for Alcohol and Drug Addiction Center in Duluth, Minnesota. Opiate addicted people, just like we don't say slaves, we say people that were enslaved. It's much more conscious, kind, considerate, instead of saying they're addicts. These are people who are addicted. In the same way we don't say these are slaves. These are people who became enslaved. Okay? So people who became addicted, often, I would venture to say always, no fault of their own. We don't want to blame them and shame them, but we also don't want to take years and years and years to get around to helping them, because the longer they stay addicted and tend to go on a more poor diet and become less minerally viable, the more chances that they're going to become hemispheric dominant in the brain, and the more resistant they're going to become. So let me explain. If I go and I speak with the 3 nurses at the Center for Alcohol and Drug Rehabilitation in Duluth, and I say, listen, I wrote a book called Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, and underneath this, in a land where it's full of paper mills and toxic polluters and crap in the water that's been discharged, PCBs in Lake Superior, and our youth are eating pizza, Mountain Dew, Cokes, McDonald's, Wendy's, the absolute scourge of the earth that does nothing to give them any minerals, vitamins, enzymes, and they go long enough having been born with the larger head circumference size, dwarfism, giantism, hypophagia, development issues. We see everything from, delayed development, sexually, puberty, etc., to precocious puberty, where, as my client said on Thursday, the little 9-year-old girl that came along, that's her granddaughter through her daughter's partner, had her period, what I call a moon cycle, because I don't like the word period. It's the end of a sentence. So a 9-year-old trying to navigate having her monthly cycle, okay, is kind of traumatic. I mean, someone else is probably going to watch this. Someone is going to say, that's just evolution, and we're moving towards having early puberties and yada, yada, yada. But that's not true, okay? The same way it's not true that little boys wake up every single day all over the world and wonder if they're little girls. It's absolutely glaring on its face that these things are happening because of unnatural selection. That's my coined term. Darwin came up with natural selection. It's basically like survival of the fittest, meaning that you would have mutations in your code, your DNA and your RNA, if it was necessary or it helped your survival. And they were small, fractional, 5% over 200 years. But today we have unnatural selection, which means that, because of this DDT, PCBs, fungicides, insecticides, herbicides, all the products that people are using in their hair, their eyes, their teeth, their skin, what they shower in, I mean, it is absolutely insane. So anyone who becomes an addict is someone who first had anxiety and depression. It's often going to be someone who had a decreased thyroid function. Someone who, in all likelihood, in today's generation, meaning you're 20 and under, was born nearly hypothyroid with a sluggish thyroid gland because mom didn't give them enough minerals. Now, when I speak about these things with people, these are things that took me, these insights, took me decades of my life, and now when I work with someone, I'm able to very quickly go in and find out what's really happening. That's the executive level coaching I do through naturallywithkaren.com. That's where I also have courses that you can do on your own. I want to show people and help them, really truly help them to heal. And the most difficult part with addiction is when the person who is addicted, not the addict, is willing to get the help, and you hope with all of your heart, because I have experience with this a great deal, and it hurts. It is stressful. You don't sleep at night. You worry, especially with fentanyl, you worry on a daily basis. Is that person alive? Are you okay? You're texting. You're double checking. You can see the aberrant behaviors. You can see the colorations changing. You can see the brain starting to struggle, okay? And you want to help them, but for some reason, because of the hemispheric dominance and the resistance, especially when it becomes very left hemispheric dominant, and Dr. Watts speaks a little bit about that in his book, you can see that people resist you and you want to help them, which is probably why for many years I found it almost traumatic living in a community, especially going to Cloquet Natural Foods or going up to Whole Foods in Duluth to buy my food, and teaching at Whole Foods in Duluth, teaching 15 courses through Carleton County Community Education. Lastly, in 2010, I taught juice feasting and on, okay? Detoxification type courses, a little bit of beginning African hand drumming. It is traumatic, frustrating. It can be anger producing to say, we could fix all this with just doing this, okay? But we can't if we have left hemispheric dominant, resistant, rigid thinking. Now, is this something that was planned? Is this part of the traps? That even when I go to speak to the various nurses at the Center for Alcohol and Drug in Duluth, Minnesota, they say, oh, I know, but we offer MAT. Now, if you've lived with parents that were alcoholic, parents that were on pain medication, which are drugs, okay, people that were on anxiety medication, which are drugs, dogs which are on anxiety medicine, which are drugs, you're not really getting to the root of why you have the anxiety. And that was my live stream yesterday. Get off the weed. Kelly Brogan is a doctor. She wrote the book A Mind of Your Own. You don't have to run out and buy the book. I'll just tell you that in the book, and she had read empirical science, that people from bipolar all the way to psychosis were completely reversed and off medications by taking them off wheat. Okay? Now, I've helped people heal for 34 years, and sometimes I'll inevitably get the questions. But, I mean, mine has an opiate addiction and, you know, the beginnings of cancer. It's time to gather what we need to gather, to stabilize so that you're healthy enough to go through this, detoxify, figure out your mineral levels and what kind of toxic metals are happening for you right now through a hair test, $125. None of it is thousands and thousands of dollars unless you need a lot of the coaching. And step by step, we're going to get you regenerated most of the time, okay? I cannot give medical, legal, psychological advice. I'm going to say that in every video. I have an 18-year career in law in very high established places, in judges' chambers and the DA and specialty law firms for over 10 years with Paul Ness and Robert Lewis. I can give information. I can give knowledge. I can guide you. But I can't do what a doctor or a pharmacy can do and say, this is absolutely what you do. This is a dose that you take. But I can give you way more. Okay? I'm confident and competent. And I want anyone who's watching this video who helps people that are chemically dependent, who works with doctors, who work with people that are chemically dependent, who work with people as a Coumadin nurse, like one of my clients here locally does, a blood thinning drug, right? We give people a drug to thin their blood, because we don't help them to understand that their diet would have circumvented the whole need for a powerful, hideous drug that has to be shepherdized by a nurse who sees patients all day long that are on warfarin or Coumadin. Now, if I hadn't have learned a lot of this from my grandmother when I was a baby, 1965 to 1969, a lot of it, a baby, and I hadn't continued to develop and I hadn't done this, I'd stayed working in law, which was my bread labor, and I took that money and funneled it into learning. A lot of these things would have never made sense to me, in the same way that back when I was eating the standard American diet and sitting down with my big glass of cow milk and my plate with my little bit of meat, dead animal, little tiny bit of vegetable and my bread and my milk and everything, and thinking I was doing good for myself, it wouldn't have made sense. The me today would be like, who in the heck is she? She's really out there. She's super deep, But this is where I am today after all these years. When I go to speak with people to advocate for my family member or to encourage them to consider the piece that is thyroid, the piece that is diet, the piece that is anxiety and depression underneath it, and all these centers do is take tens of thousands of dollars from the insurance companies and put them in a 28-day high-intensity men's residential where they have group meetings, which are super positive. They eat standard American slop, a nasty burger that's something you wouldn't want to eat, or standard American diet food. You're not helping the individual to sustain sobriety. You can't do that because their anxiety and depression is still there, even though you gave them a lot of feel-good, even though you gave them Suboxone or Suboxone, or on the streets, subs. Do you have any subs? And they're a film that's put in the mouth, or it's a tablet. They have different ways you can take it. Or methadone, which was used really commonly 60s, 70s, 80s, for quite a while. But it's my belief that fentanyl is probably another Nazi-driven trap because of its way that it's killing our young men and the way that it's addicting people and the way that people behave when they're on it. It's to a level right now that if I'm driving into Duluth and I'm going to the juice farm or going somewhere, I can spot someone on the side of the road and I can know that person's on fentanyl by their behavior. Okay. They're doing weird stuff, which a very different look than meth or crack, or just coke or any of those things. It has a very distinct way that it manifests in the behavior. Why, oh why, will people who run treatment centers, counsel, nurses, work in chemical dependency centers like the Haven, the Center for Alcohol and Drug, and they're in your city, they're all over the United States, they're doing their best to respond to the crisis. But the crisis was a part of the trap. And you have to know this, and then you have to understand why and how. Why did it happen that our people became addicted? Well, for my family member, it was that a doctor prescribed pain medication following a surgery. And it felt really good to the anxiety. And sometimes younger people don't have the same level of discipline as an older person. I didn't have the same discipline at age, 15, 20, 30, 40 as I do now at 57. My discipline's very different. Okay? Just like your perception of time. When you're a very young child, a summer day just goes on and on and on because your perception of time is very different. As you are older, you have more years of experience on this plane. It's lifting the blinds, doing what you do, doing your homeschooling is the case for Kim, getting outside, doing some nature, preparing some meals, and next thing you know, you're closing the blinds, and it's fast. And you become acutely aware of time. I got my pack here is seeing someone at the window, so bear with me just a minute. Hey guys, come on. Fire. Come on, Fire. There's a dog outside the window, so bear with me 1 minute, please. I take a sip of my chai and almond milk. Zawa, could you please get the dogs for me real quick?
What?
Could you please get Fire for me, please?
Fire, come here, buddy.
I'm going to ask Zawa to help me with Fire.
Come here, buddy.
I want to make one thing really crystal clear. We cannot help people who've become addicts if we still have doctors that are dispensing medications, and people believe, trust, put full faith and credit in these medications. And they, because of their anxiety and depression, because of their mineral lack, because of their toxicity, because of feeling so downtrodden by what they see and they hear and they experience, the grief and the strife, and it's all over, then our doctors have to have a greater accountability. The drug companies need to have an accountability to the people. They are not a client-serviced business, a client-centered, client-centered business like I am. If I don't help my clients, and I've been self-employed doing the executive level coaching for 16 years in Minnesota and before that in California, I don't eat. So if their service doesn't serve our people, neither should they, okay? And we need to come to a place where, as I'll be writing in my third book, if everyone were truly nourished, if the city of Cloquet would have not spent $750,000 on a children's playground next to a dangerous river, that $750,000 could have, per my suggestion, gone into an enormous grow room at the Vets Park where we could have acknowledged the vets, and we could have been growing food for our community. We could have been one of the first sustainable cities and communities that, because of our lengthy and harsh winters, we could have had an enclosed, beautiful greenhouse where the students, the children, the homeschoolers, which I want more of, could have come and contributed to the food that they take home. And we could have been producing food probably for our entire city of 11,000 people with that $750,000 to construct buildings on our city land and obtain heirloom seeds and clean water filtration. $750,000, you know, it's precisely why when young people go off and they take $300,000 and they burn through it in a year, that's money that I could have bought land, yurts, and set up a retreat center and generated and recycled that cash into a type of a virus or a good bacteria like a probiotic that would have spread far and wide to be a model worthy of imitation. There are other elders out there, there are other people out there that are equally interested in growing mana, you know, sweet medicine, what we need. If the chemical dependency counselors, nurses, psychologists, and doctors will only keep dispensing powerful, harmful drugs to our young people and all of our adults, okay, that we know to be harmful, if they keep doing this, we will end up weaker with more anxiety and more depression and more chemical issues with our land and our earth and our water, and we'll be too dimmed to be able to stand up and say, hell no, I don't want that cell phone tower. No, I don't want to work 8 hours a day at Super One or AutoZone or any of those stores and be radiated by big cell phone towers. I don't. No, I don't want to go and get food, as Kim taught me, that's held hostage in a grocery store. I don't. Nor do I feel good when I see a young child go by and all he's doing is sucking on a bunch of sugar and feeding the yeast inside of his body, so he's going to be the perfect opportunity for cancer, when he could be going over here to the grow room instead of the damn playground. We don't need a $750,000 playground. Children love to be out in nature, not a phony metallic painted next to a river that could sweep them away, that's not even but 4 blocks away from a hideous, polluting Sappi, the South African paper company. Our community has been plagued with mercury, sulfides. Now they want to come up, and even the reservation, which is a mile from me at Fond du Lac, and I've given many free talks, we're not saying anything about pipelines. Why is that? You know why? Because the elders are still able to be awake. If in my case, every time someone said you need a medication, I said, hell no. No. No, 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 no. No, I don't smoke cannabis despite the dreadlocks. It's pretty rare. I went about 9 years up here, and maybe if I take 2 hits every once in a great while, or if I was sitting down with Kim on our land and I decided to have an edible and relax one night, maybe. But smoking isn't healthy. If we find solutions, we don't have to run away from problems. Okay? If we have natural selection, we have grow houses, we have the Clown and the Little Redhead Wendy's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and all of those that can turn into enclosed grow rooms until they decompose. We need to think about resurrecting ourselves, for our children, for everyone. Okay? If these people don't listen, if they roll their eyes, which I've gotten for 3 decades plus, oh my God, oh, she's coming back in again. I said, I'm going to name every one of you. Every one of you. I stand up and I give talks by myself. And these things have to happen. Because our children can't just believe that when they don't sleep, they go to the doctor and the doctor gives them Klonopin. That is a gateway drug. You educated us in the schools, which are institutions, linear barf back in institutions. And I encourage you to read the book, find the book, and read the book, Kim, The Public Orphanage. Okay? Not easy to find, well worth the read. We cannot just respond to the problems. We need to create solutions. So I've had just about every one of them in chemical dependency, with the exception of 2 or 3. Oh God, here she comes. Oh, she wants to do it her way. I said, well, why put them through with standard American food? We're not addressing the anxiety and depression. Well, we have groups all day. Well, we have medical assisted therapy. I said, so how long will they stay on the Suboxone or the Methadone? Well, I mean, some people stay on the Suboxone for life. I said, you got to be fucking kidding me. Are you serious? So they're getting their paycheck, getting people to go to detox, or the police will bring them into detox. If it's discovered that it's an opiate addiction, they might be so lucky, if they look like a successful candidate, to go into Pathfinders for about 5 days, where they will transition them onto Suboxone to curb the opiate cravings, some anti-nausea medication. Now, from a shaman's perspective, bless up, Jane. From a shaman's perspective, to a safe degree, I want the diarrhea and the vomiting, because that's emotional pain that's coming out. So I'm going to put the person on, like I've read Matt Finch, as I was reading through and finding other people who'd been opiate addicted and what did they do, And I like Matt Finch. And he says you do about 25 grams of vitamin C. I usually put my clients on a therapeutic dose of about 3 grams. And you help them, you get their mineral test done, and I found other doctors who had substantially, empirically found that a heroin user versus a this user or a that user had different levels on their minerals. Some that were using heroin had their calcium way down, their iron way up, their tin way up, and you could kind of see what you needed to help them with. Now, let me break this down for a minute before I leave. If my close family member is addicted and they're super high on something, I've got one choice. I can use Narcan, right? I can use the injection that they hand out in most of the cities now, and I've got 3 bags of those in my house, you know, the bags with the 2 syringes, and you quickly load them up, and you've got to put them in a thigh or somewhere in a muscle so that the person can deflate from the opiate high, and you can try to save their life, because people are dropping every day on this stuff. I cannot take this person who's addicted to the doctor, because they won't even see them, treat them, do anything aside from give them an anti-nausea medication if they're throwing up. Let's say they don't have money to go buy more stuff, and they start getting full of pain, nausea, and vomiting, and I'm talking projectile. Okay, it's intense, depending on if you're in the 1 to 4 gram category of using, or you know, you're relatively new to it. So the body gets full of pain, the nausea, the vomiting. The person is thinking, I've got to get more. How am I going to get more? They're not sleeping at night if they're combining it with fentanyl use or other types of getting high just to kind of curb the pain. And there's always going to be anxiety, depression, and emotional pain underneath this that needs to be addressed. So don't you want to get the diet cleared out? Because I've already shared with you, after reading Wheat Belly, best source, listen to Kim. Wheat Belly told you that it created the anxiety and depression. It made your gut bloody. So when you go to the clown, and I'm speaking about McDonald's, and you get a burger because you don't have much money and you're hungry, and God, I've been there. I have. I've been houseless, or what most people call homeless, twice in my life. I've been on my own. I left at 18, right turned 18 with 20 bucks in a suitcase. Everything I've got, I earned 100% on my own. You know, tens of thousands of dollars in my learning. All of it I paid for. Not a dime did anyone else pay for or help me. Not really. So, when you're hungry, you've got emotional pain, it's very attractive to go over and go into food coma. Just to get something warm in your gut reminds you of connecting with mama. It's oral gratification. Freud talked about that. Putting the smoking up to your mouth is oral gratification. Chomping on the chips like I was doing, the tortilla chips and the salsa, and then, you know, it's anger releasing and it's oral gratification. Why won't the people who are helping other people to not be addicts, not be caught in this trap, why won't you listen to me? I think it's not because I'm a know-it-all, because I'm not. I think I know. It's because we're going to do what we've always done because we've always done it. I think it's we're resistant because this is how we get our check and this is what we're told to do, period. And you learn that from linear reinforcements through going through institutions you called schools. And now you're so legalistic. You've got lines to park in, lines to wait in at the bank, lines to stay in when you do your coloring, stay in the line, right? You've got your parents, law enforcement agencies, and everyone else. You better stay in line, okay? Everything is linear. It's about the line. And the bottom line is the food industry is for profit. And the wheat is disturbing you mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's the first thing to get off of. So just taking someone off the burger buns, the pancakes, the ramen noodles, the breaded chicken nuggets, the cookies, the cereals, the peanut butter and jelly on the potato bread. Okay? All of this is food coma, self-sabotaging. It's actually using. All right? So, Jane the vegan, Pure Luminosity, Kim, I want to thank everyone for joining me. I don't know if you guys have any last questions. When people around, not if, when people around you become addicted, through the doctors, through the dark web, through the streets, through their pain, because what got my family member was, you want to feel better, don't you? Yeah, I got something that'll make you feel better. After the doctor had given bottle after bottle of pain pills, after many of the young people were already taking Xanax, after cannabis wasn't doing the trick anymore, and waxing and vaping. So I'm never going to say that I'm against cannabis. I use it in the medicine with my clients. I often use RSO and other things for clients that have probably never ever used cannabis in their life. It's a powerful medicine. Okay? Jane, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Behind the pain that you will never know, and maybe you do know, of staying up night after night after night, of checking your phone many times while you're sleeping, of hoping that you can pick your loved one up and hoping that they're still alive and hoping that they can see the other side of what it's going to look like. Mothers, grandmothers, fathers, children who have parents are hurting, and they're hurting really big time. The stress is overwhelming because of placing these traps on the field. And I care that people that work in chemical dependency open their minds enough to realize that you cannot just throw another drug, Suboxone and Methadone. You cannot just have them go to groups every day and send them out without understanding that there are daily habits that they need to change, and then where are they going to be supported when they go home and everyone's eating McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken? If it wasn't such a big deal, if I didn't wake up with joint pain and feel horrible and depressed and sleepy eyes in the corner of my eyes and feeling bloated like the majority of what I see in our Walmart, and I'd probably be one of these people riding in a cart, no offense to them, but I had to work diligently to say, I don't want to do that. And I care enough about building a world family that I want to share it, even though my own family won't listen, even though they stress me the hell out because they won't listen. It costs me valuable time I could be spending on other things to prolong agony. Okay? So, wear your fuck heroin bat in a bracelet proudly. It's not the kindest way to say it, but, speak up. Talk to chemical dependency people and say, it's got to be more than just throwing Suboxone and groups at people. You got to get to the root cause of why it's happening. Why are you serving them weed at the same time you're serving them Suboxone? Okay? And I wish you all a beautiful day. I'm going to see if I can, there we go, stop streaming. I'm learning, and I'm going to get better and better.